Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, a place where dreams take flight, with authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives and meaningful conversations, where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover world-class education, entertainment, hope and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our channel, USA Global TV. Download our app, USA Global TV. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. Thanks to our founder and executive producer, Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Music score by Yeffy Tang from Cloud Road Music. Voiceover artist Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. USA Global TV and Radio, your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited.
Howdy, Reverend Laughlin here. We're on the USA Global TV and Radio Network, and my show today is The Wise Ones. My guest had a problem today, and we're rescheduling him. And I figured, well, yesterday was Veterans Day. Sent out a lot of stuff, and I'm just going to go ahead and talk a little bit about myself today, but primarily concentrate on my military background. They're on my website, reverendlaughlin.com. You can see my photograph there. Been around the block a couple times, Navy captain. Anyway, way back when, my best friend of mine in high school and I were going to Dallas, Texas to take a Navy aptitude test, aviation aptitude test. Were we adaptable? Were we able to be a Navy aviator? And I remember him telling me that if I take the pencil and I just look at the pictures, because they're giving you pictures of what is your world looking like if you're looking out of a canopy of an airplane. And he says, if you just take a picture, pencil, and put it there on the end of the bottom of the photograph, he said, that's going to give you a better frame of reference than if you're looking at, you're turning, you're inverted, whatever it may happen to be. And so anyway, end of story, both of us passed, no problem whatsoever. So we passed the aptitude test. Then we had to take the Navy flight physical. This is 1968, and as note, I've mentioned several times, I have not missed an annual flight physical since 1968. So when I got out of the Navy in 1999, I was taking flight physicals every year for a number of years. I was taking a corporate flight physical, but once I got out, I kept that up, and I just had mine last month, as a matter of fact. So I have not missed a physical in 1967 is probably the last time I didn't have one. Heaven only knows. But anyway, we go and we take the physical. I pass. He doesn't. They keep him overnight, and he still flunks. Anyway, it's Sunday afternoon. I said, I do to the Navy. The following Wednesday, I said, I do to my wife. We've been married 57 years now. I put 31 years in the military. He was my best man at my wedding. I end up going to Vietnam eventually, and he ends up being killed in a car wreck back in the States while I'm over in Vietnam. So strange things happen. It is what it is. But anyway, I ended up saying I do, went to Pensacola, aviation officer candidate school, and I'm in there, and it's an interesting place. I had talked to somebody, a pilot that was going through training command in Corpus Christi, and we sat down, and he was telling me, okay, this is what's going to happen. You're going to go in there. Best time of my life. I knew what was going to happen, and it did exactly as he told me. It didn't make it any easier. It just made it easier to understand. But it was one of those, boot camp is boot camp, and there's some pretty rough times. But anyway, on day 2 of my boot camp, I'm sitting there in what they call NAMI, Naval Aerospace Medical Institute, I think is what it's called. And we're having our physicals. Back in Dallas, I had got some shots because I knew I was going in the military. And I said, what do I do to prevent myself from getting the same shot again 6 months, a year from now, whenever I end up in there? So they gave me a little yellow shot record. It says, you give this to them and you're not going to get a shot. Okay. So I'm there, and everybody's going through shots. Day 2 in the military, and I have my yellow vaccination card. And the guy takes a look at it. Okay. You still need this one. So I ended up getting 1 or 2 shots, and everybody else is getting a dozen. It seemed like it just they were constantly getting there. So anyway, that was a good deal. But also the guy came out and read. He said, effective immediately, all pilots, if, because of Vietnam, would have to put in 5 years after the date they earned their wings, which is anywhere depending on what kind of aircraft you flew in, a year, year and a half, 2 years, whatever. So if you put in, let's say, a year and a half, the current requirement then was 3.5 years after you got your wings. So that was a 5-year career at the beginning of your military experience. Now it was 5 years plus your training time. So now that 5 years became 6.5 or 7, depending on which particular aircraft you chose. And so anyway, now I said, okay, I'm a pilot. I went in here as a pilot. My dad was a pilot. In fact, he was a pilot for almost 18 years out of 20 years he was in the military. And so I'm thinking, I said, what about naval flight officers? And the guy looked down there and says, nope, they're still 3.5 years. So unbeknownst to everybody in the military, because I had my records right in front of me, I changed my designator. So I went from an AOC aviation officer candidate to a naval aviation officer candidate. I put an N in front of the AOC. And as far as I know, for 20 years, I never told anyone. I was very, very, nobody asked, nobody knew, because the records were there. Now, had it been a computer back then, I'd probably not had that same option. But I changed. I became what's called a naval flight officer. So instead of flying the aircraft, I'm in the back of the aircraft, basically eventually becoming what's called a mission commander. But I went through the training program there. Once I graduated, we had, I'm going to say it was about 50 or 60 people in my class. I was number 3. I was the first person to go what they call prop. The jet pipeline was that, I think I was the first person out of 20 that went prop. Almost everybody else went jet, F4s or A6s or whatever was available at that time. But we had a choice. And most of the time they kind of gave you that choice. Sometimes they would give the guy this choice and then another guy this choice. And they said, can we swap? And they said, no. Strange. I don't know. But anyway, we had choices. So I chose the prop pipeline. I wanted to be P3s. It's an anti-submarine warfare aircraft, holds about a dozen or more people. And our mission was to fly out over the ocean, 1,000 miles here, there, and yonder, do our mission for 8, 10, 12 hours, whatever, and then come back. So it was depending on where you were, how long the mission was. Sometimes the mission was very short, 6 hours, because you had a long transit time to get there. Sometimes you're only an hour away, and so you end up spending a fair amount of time doing the mission. But the training really began in Corpus Christi. So I leave Pensacola, I come to Corpus Christi, and my training is a navigation, because that's the first position I'm sitting in the aircraft. There's 3 pilots, and they rotate on a 12-hour mission, typical mission. It's about a 15, 18-hour crew day. So you end up with somebody who's always on crew rest, and they rotate in and out, because most of our missions are flown at about 200 feet. And so you need to have a really fresh person in that cockpit. So you have 2 pilots that are officers, the navigator who's an officer, and myself eventually becoming the mission commander. So we did navigation training out of Corpus Christi, and we'd fly over Texas, mark on top of something, come back. We'd fly out in the Gulf of America now and come back. And so I got very, very good about various types of navigation. How do you use these tools? And so I was graduated, got my wings. I became a naval flight officer. Now I went to San Diego for some training. Actually, I went to Dallas, Texas for recruiting duty. My wife was very pregnant at that time. She was up there in Dallas, so we drove up there. She flew. My parents were living in the LA area, and so she flew to California. I drove to California in the middle of summer, July, August timeframe. But my next duty station was San Diego. And for the first, seemed like 5 weeks or so, we lived at my parents' house in Culver City, Compton, California, Carson City, and commuted down to San Diego. Then we got a place at Coronado, and then we finished up the rest of the training there. But my training then was oriented toward P-3 aircraft, Navy P-3 Orion, anti-submarine warfare kind of aircraft. But we also did surface surveillance. We did a lot of different kinds of missions. And then after Vietnam, they even got involved in a lot more that I was never exposed to. But so I did the training there, and then they sent me to Moffett Field, which is up in the Bay Area, California. And I'm up there, and that's the first time that I actually fly in a P-3. And our missions are, okay, how do you navigate? Because that's my primary job. And so we'd fly a mission or navigational flight up and down the coast, off the coast. We'd fly one to Hawaii, flew one to Guam. And so you're experienced in various kinds of, celestial sextant with the sun, sextant with the stars, whatever kinds of navigational training you needed. That was where you tested it out. So I'm back in the Gulf of America, and I'm on a plane that does maybe half the speed of the P-3. And all of a sudden you find out you're doing 300, 350 miles an hour, and you're way far behind the aircraft. By the time you get everything done, the logs filled out, the position report send to the radio, you're automatically now due for the next one because it was a fast moving job. Well, over time you get better and better and better. And now that our job becomes condensed down to 5 or 10 minutes. It wasn't as difficult. It's just things we didn't do. So I get to Hawaii. That's my first duty station after leaving Moffett Field. And VP6 was my first squadron. They were just coming back from deployment, so I was not sent. It was January 6, 1971. And, and they said, just stay in Hawaii. Well, the squadron will join you there pretty shortly. So the people came back, and all of a sudden, because I'm an extra navigator, everybody gets free trips back to the States, to wherever their hometowns are. They've been on deployment for 6 months over in the Philippines. I'm trying to think of the name of the city. It wasn't the same one I was in. Escapes me right this minute. So anyway, all of a sudden now this plane's going to Washington, D.C. This plane's going to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. This plane's going to wherever. And I'm a duty navigator. I get them from Hawaii to California, and then the pilots have the navigation across the United States. We come back at California. I assume the navigation and get them back to Hawaii. And so that was pretty much so that first month in the squadron, I was gone a fair amount of time because everybody wanted to go somewhere, and they had spent 6 months overseas. Why not? That was a kind of a reward. So finally get a chance to start training. And now the training is, I'm a navigator. Well, you have en route navigation, which is Hawaii to California, Hawaii to Guam. Wherever you're going, you're over water. And you're talking about being over water for a long, long, long time. So you have en route navigation. You're using all of the tools that are in the aircraft that are available for the navigation. You give your reports, and it keeps the world in touch with where you're at. Now, all of a sudden, I'm in a position where I'm becoming a tactical navigator. We have a tactical mission to fly. Well, and during Vietnam, I end up leaving probably about October, November of 71, and we have a 6-month deployment in support of operations in Vietnam. Operation Market Time, I guess is the name of it. And we're there, and our primary mission is twofold. Number one, track every boat that's out there, every ship that's out there in the South China Sea, and identify it by name, location, course speed, any unusual deck cargo, anything about the boat whatsoever that's important. So we're down at 200 feet. We take off, and generally speaking, we take off a little before for daylight. And you're out there, and you're flying a mission for literally about 10 or 12 hours, depending on where you're at. Out of the Philippines, I would be flying 10 days out of the Philippines, then go to Vietnam, fly 10 days out of Cam Ranh Bay, then go to Utapao, Thailand, fly 10 days out of Utapao. And so we'd have this rotation every month, 10 days here, 10 days there, 10 days another place. But out of Cam Ranh Bay, you were literally on station in about 20 miles. So by the time you get up to about 1,000 feet, got everything checked out, now you're back down at 200 feet for literally the rest of the day. And so as soon as you can, we have 4 turboprop engines. So as soon as you can, you shut down an engine, and then you shut down another engine. So you're out there, 200 feet, and 2 engines shut down, and you can literally fly 12 hours without a problem. So it becomes daylight, and now all of a sudden you come by a boat, boom, 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 you get to the information, take pictures, and next one, next one, next one, next one. That's what you do for 12 hours. Now, what happens if we find our primary mission at that point in time was, are there infiltrator trawlers coming from North Vietnam to the south to rearm them? We had pictures of what they look like, but we also had restrictions. If we saw one, we would take a picture of it, and then you have to go off about 10 or 15 miles so they can't see you. We have one pass only, and make a decision. Is that an infiltrator trawler or not? If it is, you abort the rest of your mission and you stay there until you're relieved. They would have a ready alert launch. A ready alert is a crew that's on standby, full aircraft, full of gas. I mean, literally, they can be in the air in about less than an hour. It may be as little as 30 minutes, but boom, they come out there, start the engines and go. They know what the mission is. They've been briefed on it. All they have to do is get in the air and go to wherever you're at. So they get out there, they take over the mission, and they watch the guy by radar, 15 miles away, 12 miles away. And the guy continues south. If he ends up far enough south and he starts turning into the Mekong Delta, they send another airplane out to shoot him out of the water. I've turned over more than a couple infiltrator trawlers to other aircraft. I turned one over to submarine that tracked him down there. So that was our mission. But if you had Soviet bloc vessels coming in to Haiphong Harbor, we wanted to take a look at the deck cargo. And so one of the things we would do is you'd come down, let's say this is the boat. You come down one side of the boat and you'd ripple around and go down the back end, and then you come back around and you come back down the other side. Well, if it was a Soviet bloc vessel, our last one, you come back around again, and now you'd fly inverted, not inverted, but a pretty good turn. So you could take pictures straight down. If the deck holes were open, you could take pictures inside whatever the cargo base had. And so that required a certain amount of guessing. Okay, if the boat's 350 feet long, how high do you have to be to get the whole boat? If the boat's, so there's some trial and error. But we take pictures, but generally speaking, you'd only take one on top. You wouldn't irritate them any more than that. You would never cross in front of them, because that's usually a signal for, hey, in distress, follow me. So you'd always make sure that you come down one side of the boat, you click, 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 go around, try to get the name of the boat and other pertinent information about upright sequences and tunnel, the smokestack, insignia. Then you come around the back of the boat, click, 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 click as you're going by, make another 9270 turn. So, and then you come down the other side of the boat, click, 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 click. So you're getting a dozen or more photos, probably 2 dozen, every time you pass a boat. And then you get the location, the course and speed, and that all goes in a log. So you get 100 boats out there, you have page after page after page of logs, you have film out the gazoo. And then if you had a Russian or a Soviet bloc, then you'd have that also. And so that was our primary mission. And out of Utapao, out of QB Point, it would take us an hour or so to get on station, depending on where we were. Out of Cameron Bay, we were on station literally within 10 minutes. And then you would be flying this mission all day long. And again, easy 100 targets or more. And then we fly out of Utapao. But now our missions were out in the Indian Ocean. Who was coming toward Vietnam? And then that was what our primary mission was, to take pictures of them. But every so often we would have I'm going to call it a fun day. It wasn't. We had duty, ready, train, and cycle. And so you had a duty aircraft that was your mission. You had a ready alert mission that was what your duty was. You stayed there all day long. Sometimes you got lunch, sometimes you didn't. You had a training day, depending on what the nature of the crew needed in order to maintain proficiency. You would go out and do that kind of mission. We had one day where we really didn't have a whole lot to do, and we just decided we're on Utapao, where we knew we were headed to back to the Philippines. So we decided that we're just going to cruise about 200 feet over the beach of Thailand and Indonesia. And so we're down there, and literally we're just cruising 1,000 miles of beach at about 200 miles an hour. So it's not just a short flight. And then occasionally you get some birds in there and say, well, maybe we ought to be a little bit higher. But we came across Butterworth, I guess it's a British British base, and we did a couple low approaches. We never did a touch and go. We just did a low approach. They took pictures, and everybody was happy. So we landed and continued on. Had a couple interesting missions out there. I've written about them, but one of them happened to involve I'm on ready alert, and we get this call at 2:00 in the morning. There was a helicopter, Jolly Green helicopter, that had crashed in the South China Sea. They got everybody off. Nobody was hurt, but there was some super sensitive, top secret gear on the helicopter, and they wanted us to go out there and to make sure that the helicopter had really and truly sunk. If it had not, they had contracted with the Apollo flotation group out of Clark Air Base in the Philippines, in Guam, and they were going to come over, jump out, parachute down, put the flotation collar underneath the helicopter, and raise it so they could get that information out of there. Okay, we get out there, a lot of storms that time of year, and we're flying back and forth, and we get one radar contact, and it's just about daylight. We're flying by it, and of course you can't see much at night whatsoever. A little lightning helps every so often, but you're looking for something, and we found one rotor blade of the tail that's sticking out of the water, but the rest of the Jolly Green is just sitting there just under the surface. Kind of neat. It was really and truly a remarkable sight. And we're saying, okay, we got it. We contact Guam. They're sending the plane out. We're in contact with them. We know where they're at. We're down low at about 200 feet and just kind of wandering around. Then all of a sudden this Navy ship shows up. Have no idea who they are, what they're doing. And we're watching. And now the C-130 is coming by. They're getting ready to parachute down literally within about 5 minutes. In the meantime, this I'm going to call it a destroyer. I don't know what it was. And they send over a small boat to go over and look at this helicopter that's just below the surface, kind of just floating there, but not on the surface, but just below the surface. Well, I guess they felt pretty secure in saying, I'm going to lasso the tail and we're going to haul this thing back over to the boat, oil ship. And the Apollo flotation people are saying, stand by, 2 minutes to jump. And at this point in time, they lassoed the small boat, lassoed the tail, disrupted whatever was there for whatever reason. I don't know how they did it. And all of a sudden now we're watching the helicopter goes blah, 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 blah. And we have to say abort, abort, abort for the aircraft, for the helicopter, for the parachutists, because they're ready to jump down. And so that was an interesting mission. I have no idea what happened to the ship. But I think we're going to go to a short commercial break here real fast. Let my mind think for itself, and we'll come right back and talk some more.
In a noisy world, true connection begins with listening. Elevated listening transforms every conversation in just 5 simple steps. Pause and breathe. Set your intention. Listen with curiosity. Reflect back. Agree on one next step. Join the Listening Mentor on Let's Finally Talk with Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck, the Listening Mentor, where we help you find inner peace, one conversation at a time. Streaming every day, Let's Finally Talk TV show with Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck, only here on USA, Global TV and Radio. Subscribe to our YouTube channels to watch and engage with all our content.
Is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? In a world quick to judge, one book dares to reveal the hidden cost of silence. Discover Holy but Harmful, The Silent Sin of Judgment, How Hidden Judgments Destroy Relationships and Damage Lives by Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. The Amazon #1 bestseller that's transforming the way we understand ourselves and the way we see others. Pick up the companion workbook to uncover your own hidden judgments and learn how to break free from them. Available now on Amazon and at fine bookstores worldwide.
Howdy, Rebel Laughlin here. I'm talking about my military career since yesterday was Veterans Day. And we've been talking a little bit about some of the missions I've been flying in Vietnam over 50 years ago. Hard to believe it's that long, but in that amount of time, almost all of the military bases I was at have been shut down. All the aircraft I've flown are now in the mothball to the junkyard. And it's interesting how things change over time. 10, 20 years, they change. 50 years, they change a lot. So anyway, we're flying various missions, and the one I had there with the helicopter is one of several. We did a lot of search and rescue missions. We had a guy that had fallen overboard from a seagoing tug. They don't know when. They know he was on the boat at 6 p.m. when they did a roster muster. At midnight, he wasn't on the boat anymore. So we're the ready alert. We get launched out there, much closer than the helicopter one. In fact, it's very close to the Philippines, probably within 20 miles, 15 miles of the Philippines. And we're out there and we're looking and we're looking and we're looking. And it's really difficult to see something in the water, particularly if you got a little bit of chop, you've got a lot of waves. But anyway, we're flying by and all of a sudden we have smoke dispensers that people sitting at the windows can punch a little pickle and you release the smoke. And all of a sudden, 3 or 4 smokes go in the water because several people saw him at the same time. So we come back around, and even though you had the smokes, we knew roughly where he was. We couldn't find him on the next pass by. So we make another pass by, and okay, we see him. We know what's going on. We call, let everybody know that we have him. He's still alive. He's down there. He's waving at us. And just like they tell you, he took his pants off. He tied the knot in the end of it and got air in them, and now he's floating with his pants basically as a life preserver. Well, we also noticed that there's more than a fair amount of sharks down there, and they're pretty good sized sharks, but they're not bothering him. So we get ready, and next thing we want to do is drop a SAR kit. That's basically a raft with food and radio and other things. So we come by again on a pass back there in the back. I'm the one in charge of the back for that particular mission. So we have the people, they do their things, open the main cabin door, position the deal, come by. The pilot says, okay, now it's time. Boom, boom, boom. We throw it out. And you want to straddle him so that the package goes out and it's going to drift toward him rather than away from him. So he finds it. The life raft inflates itself. He climbs on board. And then at that point in time, we know that there is a small vessel coming out to pick him up. Okay, so we're there, we're on scene commander, and just waiting for him to be transferred to a boat. In the meantime, somebody else decides, he's close enough, why don't we just send a helicopter? So we're out there, we're vectoring the boat to where he's at. Now the helicopter's coming out, we vector the boat to where we're at. We make sure we have adequate safety of flight so that he is below us, we're well above him, so we don't have any safety of flight issues. And so he goes out there. They drop somebody in the water. They get him hooked up in a harness, and they take him back to the hospital. He survives, no problem whatsoever. The boat, I don't know what happened after that. We went home. So that was another one. But I've been involved in a number of search and rescue missions over time. Another mission we used to fly out there was you fly over these deserted islands all over South Pacific or the southern part of the Pacific north of the equator. And is somebody there? Did they put an SOS? We just periodically overfly and see, is there something, a sunken boat? Is there something out there that we should be aware of? And those are kind of neat because we come across some bigger islands, some smaller ones, lots and lots of just beautiful beaches here, there, and yonder. Never found an SOS, never found a sunken boat on the shore, but it was just a different kind of mission. But our primary missions were anti-submarine warfare, and occasionally, not often, maybe once or twice during a deployment, we might get called because they found somebody that they suspected is in an area, and we would leave our mission of whatever market time and be tasked to go out and do something. Rarely happened, but when it did, now you're in an anti-submarine warfare mission. So at that point in time, a typical mission is you get briefed ahead of time, a typical 3-hour pre-flight to make sure the aircraft, the equipment is all there. 12-hour mission, 2-hour, 2.5-hour post-flight. You wrap the aircraft up, you take all your logs and records in, you're debriefed by somebody. And so by the time you're done, it's about an 18-hour day. And our crew had a policy, it was on something that we kind of developed, that we would find a ditch somewhere on base. And if the Class 6 store where they sold Cokes and beer and booze, and we would sit there for an hour or two and solve the world's problems, talk about our flight, and just have a nice, calm debriefing of sorts, not necessarily data debriefing, but physical debriefing. And so we'd sit there, and that would become our what we call a ditching drill, because it was in a ditch. And that became our crew's policy. So for years we did that. Now, one of the things that I noticed, this was in VP 91, VP 6 is the one I was at in Hawaii. I was there for about 3 years, somewhere around, let's see, I left there in October of 73 and joined VP 91 in Moffett Field. And so my time now went from flying P3s in the fleet on active duty to flying P3s in the reserves. And the first thing I noticed was that the reserves had newer aircraft than what the P3s we were flying on active duty. I don't know why. It just happened. But on active duty, you would have people rotating in all the time. It was rare to keep somebody in the crew more than a year and a half max. And so I get to the reserves, and I end up in a crew being plussed in, and that crew had been together for 7 years. Interesting. So when I left my last crew on active duty, VP 94 out of New Orleans, I had been in that crew for 7 years. So it's different between the reserves and the active duty. And I think right now, because I have another show coming up in about 20 minutes, Talking Heads, and I'll be talking about weight loss after 50, I think I'm going to conclude here, and I'm just going to leave it between my active duty segment. So if I get a chance to do another one of these about Red O'Laughlin, I'll pick it up here, and we'll talk about what's the difference between flying on active duty and flying in the reserves, because there was a major difference. So with that, I'm going to conclude today. Have a wonderful day, y'all, and join me, please, in about 20 minutes on Talking Heads. Bye now. Oh. I thought I was going to depart the pattern, so to speak, here and get ready for the next show, but I guess I'm still on live. And so I'll just sit here until the system that B controls everything. So again, take care, y'all, and catch you next week. Let me text the producer and see if there's something going on that I need to worry about. Okay.
Thank you, viewers and listeners of USA Global TV and Radio, for joining us today. We're honoured to have your time and attention as part of our global community. At USA Global TV and Radio, we believe in the power of authentic conversations, meaningful connections, and creating a world of possibilities together. Want to be part of something bigger? Join our team of elevated listeners at usaglobaltv.com, a space where your voice matters and your ability to listen transforms relationships. Stay connected with us across all our platforms for thought-provoking discussions, expert insights, and empowering stories. Subscribe to our channels at youtube.com/c/USA-Global-TV. Follow us on social media and explore the endless opportunities we're creating for growth, learning, and inspiration. Together, we're not just broadcasting, we're building bridges and changing lives one conversation at a time. For inquiries, contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com. Music by Johnny Dies. Produced by Executive Producer and Director Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Voiceover by Mike Porter. Creative Direction by Paul Garcia. All rights reserved. Copyright 2025. Visit usaglobaltv.com to view our full terms and conditions.